Thanks. And thank you, Feli. I love your shoes. So I have to introduce myself maybe. So my name is Mark Hoffman. Oh, no picture of me. What a pity. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vertical Media, actually the company behind the HEUREKA Conference. So we are also publishing Gründerszene.de. Maybe some of you know Gründerszene.de. We are writing really bad about your startups. And right now I am talking with three hot guns about the future of media. And I would like to get them on stage. As first, the guy who is actually a little bit too late, Moti Cohen of Apester. Please welcome together with me Moti on the stage. Thanks. And Jonathan Bruck of Pocket. And Philipp Westermeyer of online marketing Rockstars. Yeah, that was not Rockstar style. I mean, you're not. Is it too hot in this room because of that? You're not clapping. I mean, these are the rockstars of media, and we're talking about the future. I mean, seriously, we should try it out. And good news for all of you because actually the air conditioner are switched on again, right? I mean, yeah, nice. So, you guys, we are talking now about the future of media. Last year, just for your information, at the HEUREKA Conference, I had Stan Sugarman.
Oh.
Now Salesforce. Now Salesforce. He was the CDO at Gruner & Jahr, one of the biggest publishing houses in Germany, and actually really missed the digitization, at least in my opinion. Philipp worked there as the assistant to the CEO, I think.
10 years ago.
10 years ago. You were young. And yeah, you had time for that. And just give me a quick heads up about your media career. I mean, you also built up an ad tech startup. You are some kind of like an expert in ad tech and media. What did you do in the past, like the assistant to the CEO at Gruner & Jahr? What did you found, and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, I started my career at Bertelsmann, Gruner & Jahr, assistant to the CEO at the time when Gruner & Jahr was a very big ship. They had a pilot and 2 drivers, and it was a really juicy business. But it was already, one could tell that that's not going to last for that long, and so I left after the first 2.5, 3 years, founded a company that did remnant inventory sales in display advertising, like Restplatz, all the stuff that's left over, the display banners that nobody wanted, we bought them in bulks and resold them. Simple arbitrage business. And then after that, we noticed there's something big going on in display advertising that's called real-time advertising. And we jumped on that ship as well, built a company in the real-time advertising space, a demand-side platform that we recently sold last year to Zalando, and that company is now the foundation for the Zalando Media Solutions, the sales house that Zalando is building for media and for selling their inventory. And I am not operationally active in the Zalando Metrigo company because all these years, aside from building companies, we had an event called Online Marketing Rockstars for the digital marketing crowd that has grown quite a bit, 25,000 visitors next year, and it's become my full-time business now, having this event and a platform and a job board and a little bit what Gründerszene does. And so I'm observing the marketing and media scene quite closely.
Okay, but you're not publishing in English, you're only publishing in German.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately. So maybe about the US American market, Jonathan, you're a co-founder and head of growth and partnerships, not CTO, as I learned. And now coming to Pocket. Who of you actually uses Pocket? Come on, you're shitting me.
A lot of customers to gain here.
Seriously? No, you just don't know that you're using Pocket, but you're using it, I'm quite sure. Do you know Read It Later? Then I would love to ask you, what is Pocket doing? Actually, most of the people in the audience don't know.
Yeah, so Pocket, we kind of set out to build we kind of say the save button of the internet. It lets people, today we just have more and more content flowing at us through all our different, email, through our chat, through our social networks, and a lot of this content's really good, and it's constantly just being pushed down by what's new. And so what Pocket does is it creates a layer for you to quickly catch what's flowing through your streams, put it into one place, syncs it across all your devices so that when and where you want to read it or watch it, it's all in one place, easy to access we parse it out so it's a really great reading experience, and everything works offline as well. So wherever you are, you really can get to it.
So some kind of like, we could call you a bookmark server that at the same time is more or less like the Facebook instant articles, because it loads,
Yeah.
it caches more or less like on the iPhone. You can read it even if you're on a flight,
Yeah.
and at the same time you can save anything that you would like to read, but you don't have time because you are working so much or you have children.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, like a lot of people like have tried to build the like save side of things,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't work if you just build the save side. And what we kind of did was take an approach which was really start with how do you consume all this stuff that you're finding, and how do you really create a good experience around it. So we kind of like also linking it to it's kind of like your digital nightstand.
Okay.
And so if it's all in one place, next to your bed, essentially, you know where it is, you can come back to it, and you can have a great experience.
We will talk about that later, because actually you rebranded your company, as I said before, from Read It Later to Pocket. I mean, there will be a cause why you did it, obviously, but as first we will come to my Israeli friend. Moti, you're from Tel Aviv, but right now located in New York, and you have co-founded Apester, and you just raised a funding round of around 90 million US dollars. 17, exactly, as I said, 17 million US dollars.
Sounds the same.
So who of you, I mean, that wouldn't be a surprise, but who of you knows Apester? I think, okay, you working there, and you too, but except you two guys, nobody knows. That's actually, well, that is not that frustrating as with Pocket, but actually, what is Apester doing? Because you are not very publicly known, right?
Mm-hmm. I think in a way, the reason we're not publicly known, it's actually one of the strengths of being natively embedded in content you probably consume all over the place. We work with publishers closely to create better interactive content as part of their routine content that they create on a daily basis. And you can see us all over the place, from BBC to Telegraph, from Welt in here, and Axel Springer, and many of the biggest publishers in the world actually use our system on a daily basis to embed interactive content as part of their content strategy. So in one way, the fact that people probably engage with us but not necessarily know that it's us, it's a good sign for the native factor of Apester.
Okay, but actually, just because I didn't prepare a presentation, or we don't have internet right now on the PC, I don't know, but how can I imagine how is Apester actually integrated? So for example, there's an article and I want to read about the next movie I'm going to the cinema, and it's Avengers, I don't know. I don't know why, maybe it's Avengers. Right. So what can I see of Apester? How is Apester included in this article about Avengers?
So it's first of all depends on the editor who create the story. Yeah. The editor who create the story have an access to Apester editor, and then you have a suite of different type of engagement engines you can embed inside the story, from polls to personality tests to video interactive engines to rolling stories, and a lot of new type of formats that emphasis on conversational approach and emphasis on integrating the voice back into the content. So in your case, it's probably gonna ask you, what do you think is gonna be the best movie in the summer? Or would you prefer to go to the Avengers or DC new shitty movie, Batman versus Superman, for example? Okay. And while you're gonna engage with it, like actually click on it, that's gonna be the only piece of content when you think about it inside the article, which give you some feedback by interacting with that, and not going to be standstill experience. That's probably one of the cases you can experience Apester.
Okay, so your tool is actually asking me what I think about my opinion. So actually, like early ages when I was asked, do I want to see Britney Spears naked? I also clicked yes.
Of course.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Just a small joke.
I don't want to tell you what type of functionality can actually, give you the actual Britney Spears naked at the same place. But as part of it is not just capturing your sentiment and opinion, but actually react to your engagement as part of your content experience. Okay, got it. So Philipp, I mean, both of these guys are quite successful. I mean, a 17 million financing round. I mean, Pocket is all over the world known, not in this room, but on all other rooms in the world they are known. I mean, and we both are creating content, and they just use this content to monetize it or to grow really big user bases. Is it frustrating for you?
In a way, I mean, economically speaking, yes. On the other side, I mean, I've done ad tech for so many years, and we bought cheap advertising that was next to content many times. And after all these years, I have noticed that if you want to do media companies, and if you love content and love journalism and love all this glamour and creating stuff and creating buzz and managing traffic and all these things, there's no substitute for that. You have to be in that game then and produce content and do stuff and build a brand and all these things. And I like to do that, and I really enjoy doing that, and I think that's stuff that I'm good at. And I'm not unhappy that after all these years in tech and in stuff that's like in the media background, I'm now producing media or like building a media brand. But yeah, I mean, you have to accept that these days it's easier to make money fast, at least with tech and with stuff that's sort of like on the second layer behind the media.
But you would call yourself or your company as a content creation company and not as a tech company, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, we do events, we do conferences, we publish articles every day, we publish podcasts. I mean, even
actually awesome podcast, in my opinion. I like that.
And thank you very much. Yeah, and I think I mean, even a conference is a media product. I mean, you have to curate people, you have to decide who to put on stage, you produce videos, you show the stuff afterwards. I mean, this here is a media product in this room. And I like that. And but I accept and I know that in the end I probably have the smaller vacation home compared to these guys. Right?
Yeah, possibly. And me either. So, Jonathan, just one question. I mean, you already described what Pocket is doing. I could call it's more or less like also a data game, obviously, and you're completely product focused. I mean, we had a Skype call before this panel, and I asked him, so are you, Jonathan, more business or more product focused? And he was like, what is that for a question? Obviously, I'm both. Everybody in Silicon Valley is. And I was like, goddamn, what a stupid question. You don't ask such questions to a Silicon Valley co-founder of a company like Pocket. But do you think that Philipp, for example, who says his company is a content creation company, does a mistake by saying that? And he should be way more product focused, and product means data and technology?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So, I mean, the way we kind of like look at it is though, like, you know, you're creating the content, but yeah, if you want to like look at the product, it's like how are people consuming the content? So I think that's kind of the product side of like the media business in a lot of ways. It's like where are they discovering it and how are they consuming it? And those are in many ways very different than like how do you create the content or where do you what is the content itself? And so I would just say like for anyone who's creating content, like what we see is that, you know, putting as much emphasis into the actual consumption experience makes a huge impact on it. And so, and that's kind of like our goal is to help, you know, so even though, you know, like people may not be reading on their website, we're letting them like catch it so that they can come back to it and consume it. And we're still trying to extend the lifespan of all this content that's being created.
But still the question would be, do they need to come back to the website, or is it just unimportant? And in the end, only the content, the written word is the most, or the media, video, pictures, whatever, is the most important thing or aspect, and not the brand anymore, which is actually the aspect that Philipp is monetizing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, good content is good brand. So, you know, like what we try to like want people to think about is like, how do you produce actually better content and build a better brand around the content you're creating? Yeah. So again, if we're constantly just like pushing down everything that's good with what's new, then we don't really put the incentives in place for people to create like great content. And we're just creating incentives for people to like create new content that necessarily isn't really high quality. So what we're hoping to do is like help people raise that bar so that the brand is the quality of the content in many ways. And then, you know, and then that's just packaged around how do you consume it.
Yeah. Moti, would you agree 100% what Jonathan said concerning content and the brand, etc.?
Yeah.
And do you see yourself with your company, with Apester, in the middle of the discussion, like between Philipp, content creation, Apester in the middle, and in the end, Pocket?
Yeah, in a way, we see ourselves as a bridge between technology and telling stories differently, and emphasis on the experience. I think there is a kind of a true trend who talks about the intersection between companies who think about the media side and the product side and the entire technology perspective. And you can starting to see it all over the place from big media companies that are actually building product teams inside their newsrooms.
Yeah.
They're starting to understand that product and experience is an essential way to monetize the content you're distributing eventually. So in many ways, Pocket is a distribution channel that helps people to get better experience, and Apester is a way to tell the stories better, could work together to help media companies that not necessarily have all the emphasis on technology or product, because eventually you have resources that you need to budget, you need to allocate to the right places. So I think what Jonathan just mentioned before, the intellectual property of creating better content is by nature strengthening your brand. And everything has changed already. The distribution changed, the way that people consume content has changed, the places are changed. We don't fight the change, but trying to embrace it and make it as an opportunity. This is what I see.
So as a question, for example, I mean, as you said before, there are a lot of different players who can actually help you also concerning data and give you more analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And as you said, also concerning allocation of resources, I mean, media companies like Philipp and mine are really not struggling. I mean, vertical media is healthy, but the point is, I mean, there's only there's a limited resources concerning, for example, hiring new developers. So wouldn't it make sense possibly only to focus on content creation and then just some kind of like contributing it through all distribution channels, like, and directly through Snapchat, I don't know, without any website, like news, now this from New York too. Would it make sense, and having zero developers, zero product guys?
So I'm a little bit biased with this one, so I'm probably going to have some emphasis because of my take on it. I think no. And the reason is because eventually, if you are just focusing on telling the stories and be the storyteller, you basically given the entire power to the platforms who holding you with everything from distribution to the way they monetize. You could be a superstar in creating content, but suddenly Snapchat or Facebook can just switch the algorithm because their own needs. They don't think about you as a media company. They think about their pricing of the share. They think about how they perform as a company. And then I think, in a way, it's going to lower your costs, make it more focused. It's definitely have some value in it. But the risk on the other side, as I see it, too big to handle in a way of media companies.
Okay, but my thoughts, for example, Philipp, as I said before, did you already have the same thoughts? I mean, it's very radical, obviously, having no developers, having no real own distribution channel, like an own website, etc. But I mean, isn't it the same game already right now? I mean, I think you will depend.
For a long time already. I mean, it's not even like, I mean, now this is the big example of that. They say they don't have a website, they just distribute videos on whatever platform is needed. And I think Philipp from Refinery 29, the guy who was here this morning, he also says that in the end, his website is only for the loyalists. He lives on different platforms, on other people's platforms.
I think it's 5 times more on different platforms. It's like 30 million unique users on the website and 150 million on all other platforms.
Exactly. I mean, that brings tons of new questions. I mean, you can't hardly document and prove how much reach you really have. I mean, how do you want to measure how much reach your Facebook videos have? There's overlap with Snapchat videos, with other platforms. It's really difficult to then interact with advertising customers using the same metrics that we've used before. So it brings tons of new challenges if you just follow the traffic and the platforms. But I mean, what I just wanted to say is it's not a new phenomenon. If you look at other companies like Idealo and all these price comparison companies that are in a way also content companies, I mean, they live on Google for years. They just happen to have a homepage. It's not a new thing. I mean, publishers are dependent on bigger platforms, not only since Facebook. Facebook has accelerated this, but I mean, with Google it was like that before in a way. And I mean, even if you look at the long media history, I mean, who was able to really build substantial media brands? It was companies that had printing, right? I mean, before SEO, printing, having a printing machine and having a printing press was the platform, or was the thing that really made you different from all the other people that wanted to like send messages So I think it's not that new. It just the cycles are close. I mean, there's Google, then 5 years later there's Facebook, and now there's Snapchat. And they keep coming and coming and coming, and that's just getting shorter and shorter. And it's difficult for the publishers, I think, to adapt with the team, with their processes, with their pricing, and all that.
So, because we're talking about the future of media, we will agree that there's no way to have no developers and just focusing on the content. You need to have a product team that focuses some kind of like also on your own channels, etc.
I mean, if I understand BuzzFeed correctly, they don't think of themselves that much as a tech company. I think they call themselves a tech company a little bit for venture capital reasons and all that. But I mean, if you speak openly with them, they would call them a media company and a process company. I mean, it's a lot about process. It's not about so much only the creative process, but the output, like playing with these platforms, really using these platforms. It's a process question, but it's not in the end a tech question. Like Facebook and Google, they have serious tech issues, and probably your companies. But I mean, a BuzzFeed and like My Little Thing, and that's not like serious tech. It's I mean, only I think window dressing tech.
Yeah, but I still think there's still the question in the room, and I don't know if we get an answer because time is not running out, but it's running fast. If we should be, as a publishing house, more a tech company or more a content creation company, and what we would call yourself because of the mindset you should have in your company.
Definitely content. Definitely content. I think we should stay a content company, and content companies should commit to be content companies and not just follow the mainstream. Times will change, right? I mean, right now there's platforms keep coming. I believe the end game a little bit is at some point that, when you see it a little bit already today, that there's a huge rivalry between the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Snapchats to actually have good content. They have to, like, maybe in the end pay publishers to get their content, and maybe at some point Twitter will tell you, hey Mark, you with your Gründerszene stuff, can you please be on only exclusively on Twitter or only on these two platforms, and they pay you for that.
They're already doing that. They already did, Philipp. No, just kidding.
But I think that's the end game. That, I mean, like with if you have upscale and really exclusive content like soccer rights, live sports rights, you see it already. There's a huge fight to get that content, and I believe you have to be special. I mean, with the content you produce.
But I mean, Jonathan, would you agree 100% that content companies or content creation companies should themselves still calling, you know what I mean, content creation company?
So I think one is if you just look at people's home screens, right? They're not putting news apps or news brands on their home screens, right? And so I think you were saying, like, embrace the change. Like, what they're putting on there are the networks and other apps. I mean, we already have 10 million downloads on Android alone, and you compare that to any other news app, right? There's only a few that actually are larger than us, and we're not a very, as you see, we're not even that big, right? And so, it's like maybe CNN. Maybe has bigger distribution in terms of an app that's generating content on people's phones. So I agree that I think the content is really powerful. It is really unique. But to your side, I think the question was, like, where should content companies maybe invest? There is a product, but the product isn't necessarily the app. It's basically, how does this content live throughout the network that you're distributing it? And that takes a lot of data. That takes a good product team and probably a good technology team to really make it successful.
Okay, but then let's agree on that point. But then the point, your example, for example, Philipp, like, then Twitter buys your content or the NFL matches, for example, etc. It is only every time only for the 1% or 0.5% of the content creator for which Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever would pay in the end to have it exclusive.
Well, that's no problem. Because it can only be that a few really good content creators. Only because everybody can produce content now. You can't promise all these people that produce content now that they are exclusive or upscale. They don't aspire to be some. You have to differentiate between obviously certain content quality levels and also aspirations. My mother is producing content, but she would never hope that Twitter is buying that or somebody else.
I have really bad jokes about that.
Yeah. You have to really be precise with the vocabulary, and content is such a huge term, and everything is content. But I can imagine for us, we only write one article a day. We have made the conscious decision to only have one article a day because we believe it's the only product we can put out at a certain level. We can't put out 20 articles a day at that level, so we just put out one. And then it's our challenge to distribute it well and maybe monetize it well.
Okay, so Moti, I mean, if I would have this discussion 1 year ago, I think all people on this panel would have agreed that you should be more a product and tech company. And it really changed only during 1 year, in my opinion, because Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook started because, more or less because of video, buying exclusive rights and buying content or exclusive content. Would you agree that it really changed during the last year, this discussion?
Not sure.
And don't say no.
Yeah. No. I think no. And the reason is, and I'm going to explain. I'm not sure that. I think the emphasis between technology and content probably going to surface up all the time. This balance between the two. Obviously, content companies should concentrate on first and foremost content. But like Jonathan mentioned, I think the experience of how the content displayed in other networks and in your own place and how it's distributed, that's the product side, that's the technology side. The data that you can collect from it and incorporate it back to your newsrooms, this is where the technology and the way that the productizing of everything could help you eventually tell better stories and engage your audience differently and eventually monetize them better. And I think in terms of the entire platforms, Philipp mentioned it, some come, some go. It's kind of a wheel, constantly going to change. I think now we can see that as kind of a big emphasis again for the IP, the intellectual property of the stories themselves, which I think this is a good movement because eventually, if you're really dedicated to creating something that provides some sort of value and not just clickbait that you would like to arbitrage, that's where you can distinguish yourself from other players. And consumers appreciate it. Consumers can see the difference. Definitely millennials, and I think part of Pocket success is because of that.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question actually from Philly.
Hi, I found what you said kind of difficult. If we take, let's say, Netflix, who had first other people's content and distributed it, right? And now has House of Cards, and everybody's like, yeah. They also sold their rights to other people, to Sky, for example, in Germany. So even though they have their own content, which makes them super special, which is why we're still on Netflix, if they don't cut us off, whatever, they still use their content to monetize it by handing it out to show to more people, so even more people will in the end come back to Netflix. So in the end, I feel like it's a circle, and I feel just protecting your own content and just keep it. I don't know, if you write a super awesome article, I'll sit down, more or less copy-paste it, and publish it.
But you do not have the brand. Game. I mean, you have the article, but you will not have the brand. I mean, you cannot differentiate. I mean, you have to think an article with a brand. And I mean, if you copy my article, that's fine. But if you do it 10 or 12 times or 20 times, I mean, I'll find a way to stop you from doing that. But you cannot build a brand just on copy and paste. I think a brand is not just one article. It's a series of articles. It's a series of videos or events and other things. And I think you have to. That's what the successful guys do right now. Build content brands. I mean, and Business Insider, you can't copy that. You can take their articles, but you cannot copy that. I mean, you even see how difficult it is for them to come into the German market because the system, the processes, the brand is not that easily transferable. It is a brand, and you can, and that's why. That's what we're building in the end. If you want to be successful with content.
But we can agree that building a brand like Vice, BuzzFeed, Vox, you name it, Business Insider, takes even decades.
I don't know. I mean, how long is Business Insider around?
12
6,
years.
7?
No, it's longer. It's really longer. They started with it's really long. It's a decade, I think, or even more.
I think but at the same time, I think it's easier than ever now in many ways.
Okay.
And so.
Because of distribution.
Yeah, and so some of the things we see is there's 3 million things saved to Pocket a day, 500,000 are unique. And so you think about, wow, that's an incredible diversity of content that's flowing through the internet every day. And even the big publishers, like the New York Times, it's less than 1% of content. So here's a multi-billion-dollar company that basically is producing less than 1% of the content, probably on the internet, on the internet. Yeah. And so you don't even have to, make that much stuff to actually be wildly successful. So I think it's a little bit different than Netflix in the sense of it's a much smaller data set of content. And so you have to it's a lot more money going into everything. It's a lot more expensive, but to actually build a brand, I think it's easier than ever. And we see these things like Wait But Why. I don't know if you read any of their stuff.
It's a long read format, right?
Refinery 21, actually.
Yeah, so we're seeing this stuff and these are one kind of person operations who just go out to tell a story.
Yeah. Okay, got it. I mean, I would have a couple of more questions, like 10 to be honest, but I don't think we will make that in the next 5 minutes. So anyone from the audience has a question right now? Otherwise, I would like to summarize it a little bit. Anyone has a question? None of you. Okay, good. Or bad, as you want to take it. So let's summarize it. I mean, we're talking about the future of media. This is an early stage conference. Your advice to found a media company. One question for you, Philipp. Would you start online marketing Rockstars again in German language, or would you start it directly in English?
I mean, that's a good question, and it's I'm asking myself all the time: should we have an English website? And I mean, I've seen you try Venture Village for years now. It's really difficult. I mean, you have to have native speakers. You're competing with international companies. I actually don't know the solution. I just know that I mean the German market, fortunately, is large enough. I mean, for us, we are very I think profitable little startup business, or not startup, but like I don't know, almost 30 people, and so it's I mean it's a very decent business. You just can't expect to monetize the content with ads. You have to do events and have to work a little harder to get the money out and try different models, just like Vice and all the others have to as well. I mean, they don't sell like just ads straightforward like the magazines did. So they come up with agencies, creative things, and so. But I can definitely advise everybody that feels the power and the energy to build a content brand. I mean, it's great times for that. I mean, you should definitely start.
Okay, so for you, Jonathan, a different question, because you don't speak German. VR is upcoming, in my opinion. So we have like written word, we have pictures, we have moving images, and in my opinion, the next step will be 3D. Right. So if anyone in this room would have an idea about 3D or VR company, media company, what would be your advice? I know it's a tough question.
That's a tough question. So, I mean, I think, I think it's something because it's very popular in the news, and so we're mostly like focused on the written word in many ways, and so it's always like I've yet to see an example of how you go from like what we're doing in the written world into a VR experience. Like, I'd be curious because everything today is very much focused on like what's kind of sexy out there in terms of games and video, but at the same time, the majority, so much of your time is still
limited.
We learn through reading, and so if we're going to live in these VR worlds, like how are we going to live in that place? So, but I think the best thing I read recently that was. We see a lot of popular things pop up in Pocket. So there was a Quora article on a VR expert from the military actually talking a lot about the problems of VR as it relates to depth perception and how even though there's a lot of things out there, we're really not as close as we think we are from a depth perception. So my advice would actually be go read that and try to think about how you build an experience that either works around a lot of these constraints that we as humans have.
Or maybe the advice is you're too early.
You might be. Even though it's in the news and there's a lot of interesting things going on, it still might be a little too early.
Okay, and for you, Moti, maybe the easiest question of all of them.
I'm all about
where should you build your media company? Tel Aviv, Berlin, New York,
San Francisco,
or San Francisco.
All right, it is pretty easy. I think New York is still the media hub of the world in many ways, and you see most of the new upcomers in terms of media companies are coming from New York.
Or content creation companies.
Like I'm talking about the content creation, the BuzzFeed and the Refinery 21 of the world. And probably as we go, it's gonna balance out because of the distribution channels, because of new type of formats that make it much easier to penetrate markets and to go global. But still, if I need to choose one, New York is probably the place.
Okay, guys, if there's no question from the audience, thank you very much for being here on stage, and yeah, a great conference for you.